so the 103-day Iran war has ended.
Today, the U.S. and Israel launched an unprecedented joint attack on Iran.
The United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
The U.S. and Israel killed Iran's leader.
That Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been killed in today's joint attack by the U.S. and Israel.
Iran shut off a fifth of the world's oil and gas supply.
The Iranian officials say the country has closed the Strait of Hormuz.
The economic shockwaves hit every single person on Earth.
The week ended with the highest gas prices in 4 years.
There are long lineups for fuel from Pakistan to Cambodia to Vietnam.
And now there is, naturally, a lot of spin out there. A lot of people declaring victory, one guy in particular.
And we've won. Let me say, we've won. It's been won. We won. We defeated them. Defeated. We've won this. This war has been won.
Well, we are going to cut through the spin and ask, yes, who won and lost here, and what did they win and what did they lose? But more than that, we're going to ask, what does all this add up to? This was a huge event that could change the course of the world for many years to come. So, okay, how does it change things? To help answer that, we've got the physical, actual agreement between the US and Iran. So we're going to look at what it actually says, like what's really in here, because that is pretty different from what they are claiming is in here. We'll also look at what each side set out to accomplish and what they actually accomplished or didn't, and where that leaves them, and what that means for the world. So, let's get into it. Okay, so we've got this board up here with the three main parties to the war. And what we're going to do is fill this in with each country's main goals in the war. And then we're going to mark off each of those goals as either successful or failed. And that will allow us to step back and take the full picture of what this war changed and didn't change and what it all added up to. We're going to map out the U.S. war goals first, starting with the thing that Trump has brought up over and over as the primary reason for the war: stopping Iran's nuclear program.
And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon.
He has been trying to accomplish this for 10 years. He first ran for president promising to do it. He spent a bunch of his first term launching attacks on Iran to try to get them to the table. So this war was supposed to finally accomplish it by force. Destroy Iran's nuclear facilities, destroy its enriched uranium, end it once and for all. So that's goal number one. Goal number two, destroy Iran's missiles. And the TLDR here is that Iran has all these missiles that can reach all over the Middle East and a little bit beyond it. The US hates this because those missiles can hit all sorts of US military bases in the region or US allies like Israel, which in fact they did many times during the war. Iran might also have missiles that can reach further. About a month into the war, they maybe tried to fire missiles at this American-British base in Diego Garcia, but they missed. So even if they do have super long-range missiles, they apparently don't work. But either way, the U.S. made a big deal at the start of the war that it was going to destroy Iran's missiles forever.
We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground.
Best way to stability, given the people who are in charge in Iran, is to destroy the ability of Iran in the future to launch these missiles and these drones.
They will not have ballistic missiles to hurt us, Israel, or the region.
Okay, on to goal number three, to turn Iran into like kind of a puppet. Let me explain. At the start of the war, Trump said over and over that he wanted this to be like Venezuela.
I said, how's that going to work? And he said, it's going to work very easily. It's going to work like it did in Venezuela.
Remember, back in January, Trump had U.S. Special Forces kidnap Venezuela's president, then cut a big trade deal with that president's successor. He's talked about doing this in Cuba, too. And if I can summarize for you the 10,000 times he said he would do Iran like Venezuela, he's described it like this: take out Iran's leader, cut a deal with the new one, turn a hostile state into a compliant one without really changing Iran itself, and then declare victory. So, okay, we've got the three big American war aims here. The goals important enough to the United States to start an entire open-ended war to achieve. Now, let's ask how they did, starting with destroying Iran's nuclear program. And Vice President J.D. Vance has been saying that this one is a total success.
The nuclear weapons program is destroyed. It is gone.
Oh, okay. But, it's the funniest thing. Exactly a year ago, the US and Israel bombed a bunch of nuclear sites in Iran, and after that, Trump also said that Iran's nuclear program had been destroyed.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
And one way you can tell this was not true is that 9 months later, Trump started a war to destroy the nuclear program he'd already claimed to have destroyed. So if it wasn't true the last time they claimed this, is it true now? This article summarizes a report by America's own intelligence agencies that found only limited damage to Iran's nuclear program. They concluded that the time Iran would need to build a nuclear weapon has not changed at all from the war, that it would still take them at most a year to do. So, not destroyed. But let's look at this peace deal between Iran and the US, because it includes a line on this that has gotten a lot of attention. Right here on page 2. Sorry, I don't know why this page is randomly super blurry. This is the copy that Iran's 71-year-old president posted online. That's where I got it. I don't know, boomers. Anyway, Article 8. The Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms that it shall not procure or develop nuclear weapons. And that sounds like a big deal, right? Except this is not new. This has been Iran's official position for more than a decade. The rest of that nuclear provision says Iran agrees to discuss nuclear enrichment and related stuff like its stockpile of nuclear fuel, which is also not new. Iran has been offering to negotiate this stuff with the US for years. And then check out what's in the next provision. Article 9. Pending a final deal, Iran will maintain the current status quo of its nuclear program. Iran will maintain the status quo of its nuclear program. This is now the officially US-endorsed position. It's got Trump's signature at the bottom. So the goal was to erase Iran's nuclear program forever. And the result is to endorse Iran's status quo nuclear program in a formal diplomatic agreement. I think that we have to call this one failed. Okay, now what about the second big military goal, destroying Iran's missiles? Let me save you a little time here. I could show you Vance saying this was totally accomplished, then the reports concluding that that's not true, and then footage of Iran firing off round after round of the missiles they supposedly don't have anymore. But instead, let's hear from Trump himself on how the U.S. position on Iran's missiles has, let's say, evolved.
I mean, they have to have some because other people have some. You got to have some. Somebody said, you shouldn't give them one. I mean, I have guys, I like some of these guys. But I don't think they're smart. Sir, you shouldn't let them have any missile. I said, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to let Saudi Arabia have missiles, but they can't have them? Yes, sir. It doesn't work that way, you know? It doesn't work that way, and missiles aren't the problem.
I'm sorry, I know that's a long clip, but this is a crazy moment. The imaginary warhawk he's mimicking here.
Sir, you shouldn't let them have any missile.
This has been the mainstream Beltway DC position forever. The US cannot accept any agreement with Iran unless it forces them to have 0 missiles. This was Trump's position for years too, including 4 months ago when he launched this war to accomplish it. But it's crazy. It's simply not possible to make a sovereign country dismantle the perfectly legal tools of their own national defense. And if you try, you're just going to convince them of the necessity of building more. So, look, I was living in DC, covering US foreign policy, when Iran hawks first put forward this demand about a decade ago. And some of those hawks would tell you, off the record, practically whispering, that they knew it was unachievable. It was designed to be unachievable, so they'd have an excuse to oppose any agreements with Iran and push the US towards doing what they really wanted, which was a full Iraq-style invasion. But over the years, hawks in DC, I guess, forgot this was a phony poison pill demand, or they talked themselves into believing it, and it became actual policy. But it seems like Trump himself has, in his own Trumpian way, sort of belatedly realized what's going on here.
You said you don't mind Iran having ballistic missiles. Can you elaborate on that?
No, I'm saying that if other countries have them, it's a little bit unfair for them not to have some.
Okay. So the goal was destroying Iran's missiles, and the result is the president saying it's only fair that Iran have some missiles. It's crazy. I am calling this one another fail. Okay. Goal number 3, the main political goal, the Venezuela option. Replace Iran's leader with someone friendlier. They did kill Iran's leader, but power went to his son, so it's not exactly regime change. And as for whether Iran is now bending to America's will like Venezuela did, I think the best way to answer that is by finally showing you the full picture of what is in this. This agreement is easier to understand if we divide it into 3 sections. These first 5 provisions basically all say we both promise to stop fighting. No more military operations, no more blockades, no more war. And these next 4 really just say we'll both try for a nuclear deal sometime later. This is where it talks about giving Iran $300 billion, but just if they reach a final deal on the nuclear issue. To recap, so far this says we're going to stop fighting and we're going to punt the hard issues to later. So far it's not much to report, but it's balanced. Until you get these 2, the last 2 substantive provisions. Number 10 says immediately upon signing, the U.S. will issue waivers for the export of Iranian crude oil. In other words, the U.S. just lifted all sanctions on Iran's most valuable export. It's a huge win for them. That opens up $60 billion a year in expected revenue for Iran. In Article 11, it says the U.S. will make fully available the frozen or restricted funds or assets of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Without getting too technical, Iran has $50 to $100 billion of its own money in banks around the world that it can't access because it's frozen by U.S. banking sanctions. And this says the U.S. will lift those sanctions. In other words, another $50 to $100 billion to Iran. So you look at this deal altogether. What you've got is, we'll both stop fighting, and here is a 9-figure payout to Iran, for which the US gets nothing in return. That does not sound to me like America just Venezuela'd Iran. Kind of the opposite. It seems like Iran Venezuela'd us. I am calling this one a failure. Okay, well that's sort of a tough balance sheet for the US of A. 0 out of 3 goals achieved. Let's see if Israel did any better. This is Benjamin Netanyahu addressing Israelis 6 weeks into the war. And he said something here he doesn't usually say publicly.
הצלחנו פה לקטוש את תוכנית הגרעין, לקטוש את תוכנית הטילים, והיה לנו גם יעד נוסף, לקטוש את המשטר באיראן.
So it's no secret Netanyahu has been trying for decades to get the US to help him topple Iran's government, which he believes would set off a chain of dominoes, completely transforming the Middle East in Israel's favor. But he's mostly pushed this behind the scenes. He almost never says it publicly. So the fact that he said it out loud means he thought he was finally on the verge of achieving full regime change in Iran, like the US did in Iraq. And this, in his mind, would also solve Iran's nuclear program, its missiles, everything. Okay, his next goal with the war. Use it as cover, occupy southern Lebanon. This is Lebanon. The idea, I think, was that attacking Iran would provoke Hezbollah, the Iran-allied group based in southern Lebanon, to attack Israel, which would be Israel's excuse to not just invade, which it's done many times before, but to basically raise it and take permanent control, especially with the US distracted by the war. Netanyahu calls this occupation a security zone. It's his phrase for what Israel did in Gaza. And here he is saying he's setting out to do it in southern Lebanon too.
כפרי הטרור מעל הקרקע, ויצרנו רצועת ביטחון בין 8 ל-10 קילומטר.
And then goal number 3 is one that Netanyahu has not said out loud, but if you read any Israeli news commentary, is widely understood to be a pretty significant part of what's behind the war. And that is saving Netanyahu from jail. Let me explain. Since 2020, Netanyahu has been on trial for corruption, and the evidence is against him. He could really go to jail. After Israel invaded Gaza in 2023, he started using the war to force delays in the trial. Every other time he was due to take the stand, what do you know, there'd be a new Israeli offensive, and his court date would be canceled. The Gaza war also boosted his popularity, which helps keep him in office, where he can use his powers to fight the courts. Which is why basically every Israel watcher thinks the Iran war is likewise a way for Netanyahu to both drag out his trial and keep himself in power and therefore out of jail. So this is the main Israeli war agenda. Yes, there's other stuff going on here, but these are the big things that brought them into the war. Now let's see how much of it they accomplished, starting with regime change, for which the answer is very clearly no. The Iranian government, as we know it, remains as secure and defiant as ever. If anything, it's more secure because Israel has used up its greatest threat against them, US-led war, and Iran proved they can take it. Plus, Israel will probably never get the US to do something like this again. Listen to how Trump talks about Iran's leaders now.
And we're dealing with people that I think are very rational people. I mean, they were nice to deal with. They were strong people, smart people.
So Israel didn't just fail at regime change, they maybe took it off the table forever. Okay, now what about goal number 2, seizing southern Lebanon?
Israeli airstrikes continue to bombard areas across southern Lebanon.
Israel's invasion is ongoing. We don't know for sure how it'll turn out, but for the moment, I think we have to say, yeah, they are succeeding at this. This is an Associated Press map highlighting the area Israel already occupies in Lebanon. This line here is the Litani River. Israel told everyone living here to leave and says it intends to control this entire area, which is twice the size of Gaza. Normally, the US, for all it lets Israel get away with, would have opposed such a brazen land grab, but it was preoccupied fighting Iran, which I'm guessing was part of Israel's calculation. But now, there is a hitch for Israel in here, in the US-Iran peace deal. Remember how these first provisions just say we promise to stop fighting? Well, there's a bit of fine print in here, in Article 1. Termination of military operations, including in Lebanon. Actually mentions Lebanon 3 times. Now, Israel didn't sign this, and they say it doesn't apply to them. But Iran got the United States to promise to make Israel stop, or the war is back on. Which is why, as soon as the deal got signed and Israel started bombing Lebanon again, you started hearing stuff like this.
We have a little dispute over Lebanon. I say, you can do a little softer touch, Bibi. You don't have to knock down a building every time somebody walks into it that's from Hezbollah.
Or this.
Now, I'm not happy with the way Israel has handled themselves with Lebanon and with Hezbollah. They should have been able to do the job faster. It just goes on forever.
Still, American presidents have a long history of complaining about Israel without actually doing anything to stop it. So until Trump's words turn into action, I think we can expect Israel's occupation and arguably its ethnic cleansing of southern Lebanon to continue. What about goal number 3? Saving Netanyahu's skin. Let's look at what polls in Israel say, because it is not good news for him. One poll asking whether Netanyahu's conduct benefited or harmed Israeli interests found 52% said harmed to only 24% saying it helped, and 43% saying Israel lost the war to only 11% saying it won. Here's another poll asking whether Netanyahu should run for office again. 59% said no to only 33% who said yes. So this looks terrible for him, right? In the last few years especially, his entire political brand has been, I'm the guy who will keep Trump happy and wage total war on our enemies. Now Trump is mad at him, and his war is seen as a defeat. So I'm calling this another failure. Although Israel's political system is weird, it is possible he could hold on to power when Israel has elections in October. So I am not saying he is definitely headed to jail, just that this war really, really did not help him to stay out of it. So 2 reds and 1 green for Israel, and I want to come back to Lebanon war in a future video because this is a big deal. But for now, let's look at Iran. Its first goal in the war was to not just survive, although surviving is not nothing when you're being attacked by a nuclear-armed superpower, but to inflict enough damage on its attacker to extract money. Call it reconstruction aid, call it war reparations. Iran is a very poor country. Months of bombing caused enormous damage it can't afford to repair, which is why it really needs this. Second goal was to take the Strait of Hormuz, this international waterway it borders, and claim it as Iranian territory.
This is what Tehran defines as its area of authority in the Strait of Hormuz. It stretches from Kui Mubarak in Iran all the way down to the south of Fujairah in the United Arab Emirates.
Before the war, Hormuz was and had always been a completely open waterway. During the war, it was under Iran's control, but closed. And what Iran wants to do now is open it, but keep control in the form of dictating who can cross and collecting a fee from anyone who does. Okay, third Iranian goal, and it is a big one. Establish deterrence over the United States. Iran has spent the last 20 years under threat of American attack ever since the US invaded 2 of its neighbors and hinted it was next. The US has bombed it, crippled its economy, killed its leaders, so maybe Iran saw an opportunity, impose a steep enough cost on the US, and it will learn that attacking Iran is not worth it, not in its interests. That is deterrence. So, okay, Iran's war aims. How did it do? First step, money to rebuild. Let's look at that peace deal again. Remember, these last 2 provisions say Iran can finally sell its oil. That's $60 billion a year, and it can access its money frozen in foreign banks, another $50 to $100 billion. Plus this line saying at least $300 billion for reconstruction. But here's the thing, this $300 billion is only if they reach a comprehensive nuclear deal with the United States, which I will be honest, I think is not going to happen anytime soon. The frozen funds thing might also be contingent on a nuclear deal. It's kind of ambiguous how it's written. Only this one, the oil oil exports is for sure. So truthfully, I think Iran is getting less than everyone is saying than all the big numbers you're hearing thrown around. But even if it's just the $60 billion a year it gets from selling oil, I would still call that a win. Okay, now Hormuz. And the big test for whether Iran owns Hormuz is whether they will get away with charging tolls for crossing it. That would prove that it's effectively their territory now. Trump says it's open without Iranian tolls.
Because we have an agreement where it's going to be open, and it's toll-free.
Iran says we're just charging fees, which are totally not tolls, except it's the same thing.
We have always maintained that we do not seek to collect transit tolls, but we will design and collect the necessary fees for the services we will provide.
And if you read the agreement closely, Iran might have this one. Here, Article 5 on Hormuz. No charge for 60 days only. That sure sounds like they're charging after 60 days. And down here, Iran and Oman will define the future administration and maritime services in the Strait of Hormuz. Define the administration of Hormuz sure sounds like running it, and maritime services sounds like those fees we heard Iran say are definitely not tolls. But there have been no fees or tolls yet, so it might be too early to hand this one to Iran. Still, even if they never do it, they've proven that they can close the strait whenever they want, and the world can't really do anything to stop them, so fees, no fees, it's already theirs. Last one here, deterrence of the United States. And let's answer this by looking at the board, taking it all in. The US launched this war in Iran. It's been threatening for 20 years, and it achieved none of its goals. It's out hundreds of billions of dollars. The president took a hit in the polls. Members of his own party are accusing him of abject surrender. The economy dipped from the oil shock, and Washington is on the outs with his closest ally in the region. I think it is safe to say the next president who considers doing this will think twice. So look, if I had shown you this at the start of the video, you would say I was exaggerating. You would say there's no way that it's really this one-sided. But look, we went through it. I showed you that each of these was a top priority of the 3 countries in this war. I showed you why it mattered to them, and I showed you, in their own words, what result it got them. There's no way around it. The US categorically lost this war, Iran won it, and Israel was a mix, but they lost more than they won. And for the world as a whole, what this war added up to was, I think, 5 big things. Official US acceptance of Iran's missile program. The death of Israel's regime change agenda. Israeli occupation in Lebanon, Iranian control over Hormuz, and Iran establishing deterrence over America. And there's a possibility, we won't know for a few months, of a 6th, Netanyahu losing power, losing his trial as a result, and going to jail. Those 5 or 6 things alone make this a very consequential war. 100 days, and the Middle East is now a very different place, maybe for good. American power is very different. And if history is any guide, there are going to be all sorts of second and third order consequences coming further down the line that will ripple all over the world in all sorts of ways that, I'm not going to try to predict. I'm not going to venture wild guesses for what those are going to be because I'll just get half of them wrong. So instead, I will just offer that when those consequences come, I will be here to talk about them.